Reggae Party, Rockers Arena, RadioLily.com, NightNurse with you. Thank you all for checking in. As this has been being planned, I invited various folks to drop by, all who in my life have had definite experience and influence and part of the whole punky reggae scene. We have Andy Schwartz, who was the publisher and editor-in-chief of New York Rocker from the pivotal punk years, I believe, Andy.
1977 to 1982.
There you go. And then we have Joly, who I knew as the ponytail punk that sat in the hall, the lobby of the Ritz, and sold every badge you could ever imagine. And I know there's a lot more to you, Joly.
There is more.
Come on now.
So, I don't know, where do you want me to start? You know, do you want to start with me or with Punky Reggae?
Okay, I just meant in proper introduction.
Yeah.
So, but I guess you'll get to that. What I would like to do, if it's okay, and this may help lead you as a proper Brit who lived through it. This is a book by Vivian Goldman, a friend to, I believe, everyone in this room.
Indeed.
In fact,
And I will say about Vivian before you go on, that you just played
yeah.
Tide is High by Blondie, and it was Vivian who sent the tape to Chris and Debbie that they listened to that made them record the record in the first place.
So she sent them the
original John Holt.
That's pretty cool.
Version,
That's pretty hip, you know, because
so Vivian has had more influence than most in this beat.
Because, you know, for I think a lot of Americans, when that Blondie album came out, we didn't even know it was a cover.
Yeah, I would say that was probably true for most people who heard the song or bought the record.
Yeah.
And I believe John Holt is playing soon at is it the Barclays Centre?
Yes, there was the Reggae Extravaganza show, Joly. Is that the one?
Yeah.
With UB40, John Holt.
Yep.
And I can't remember.
Any moment now. It's coming up next month.
Yeah.
That's pretty hip. John Holt's at the Barclays Center. Nice to know that. All right, so Andy Schwartz, Joly are here with us. We're having a punky reggae party, and I want to read an excerpt from Vivian's book, which then maybe both of you can jump off, but Mr. UK Roots, you know, I know this. This is, for Joly, this is like a really soft show because he lived in England, like when the scene was real. But for many of us who are US, I know we're liking it. So give me 1 second while I find that part where Vivian sort of sets the stage of what was going on in England and what even inspired Bob to run into the studio with Scratch to do this. It was when Bob was in England because he had run away from Jamaica when they tried to kill him. And let's see, times were interesting in London. Punk was in full bloom, and groups like Aswad played Rock Against Racism with The Clash. The tune of the year was Culture's classic 2/7's Clash. It was generally felt that 1977 was somehow a significant year. On 7/7/77, many Jamaicans actually stayed home for fear of a biblical Holocaust. But nothing unusually dread happened that day, since Don Letts, the dread DJ at the Roxy Club, had turned the inner core of punks onto reggae, and Johnny Rotten had played a dazzling selection of reggae on the radio. A whole generation of white youth was as obsessed as their black schoolmates with the works of the Joe Gibbs and Channel One studios. Reggae was the crucial to be colonized black music for punks, as R&B had been to the 60s white rock generation.
A good analogy, I say.
You know, I think Vivian tends to hit
good
nails on heads. Blah, blah, blip, blip. Right on time, Lee Perry arrived to stay in a flat in Island's Basing Street studios, where the Wailers were mixing Exodus. Bob spent a lot of time there, reasoning with his old spar companion, for those who don't speak patois. A lot of time there, reasoning with his old spar, whom he openly referred to as Genius. There, the two of them heard punk band The Clash for the two of them first heard punk band The Clash's version of Scratch's haunting production of Police and Thieves by Junior Murvin. Punk seemed as weirdly alien to Marley as he himself had seemed to earlier rock bands. He teased a woman who punk bleached her hair. "You should have dyed it red, gold, and green." the Rasta Ethiopian colors. Goes on, and what I really want to say is what drove them into the studio is this quote that Marley used. Me like see them safety pins and thing. Me no like to do it myself, you understand, but me like see a man who can suffer pain without crying. And in spontaneous spirit, Marley and Scratch went into the studio with members of Aswad, though some Wailers later added music, and cut a song called Punky Reggae Party. Bob sang of the two tribes, punks and dreads. That's an end of a quote by our friend Vivian Goldman. And now, for those who were there...
All right. Yeah, I'd like to talk about this, and sort of take the history back a bit further. And the history of sort of, English youth, and Jamaican music goes back, much further. The original, there was a big immigration in the 50s. Duke Vin and Count Suckle had sound system. Duke Vin, who just died a couple of weeks ago. And if you remember, in the 60s, there were times of mods and rockers. You've heard of the mods and rockers fighting. If you actually go into it, you'll find that where the mods and rockers got together was at blue beat dances. And that all these English bands, if you listen to like Five Live Yardbirds with Eric Clapton, they're playing like blue beat. They're all there was bands like the McGill Five. They had a hit record, Mockingbird Hill. So blue beat was big. My Boy Lollipop became a big hit, but there were other records like Ezrico and the Launchers, King of Kings. That were chart. That were chart record. That were chart records. Okay. Then in '67. Al Capone by Prince Buster, Guns of Navarone, Train to Scarville, records like this blew everything open. Then Rocksteady came in. You had Skinheads in '69, with Rocksteady. I mean, even Slade were originally a skinhead band playing, sort of reggae music, and so there was a kind of history there. But then in the '70s, things got bad. You had inflation. There was bad times, and British pop music became like a sort of Woolworths thing, and that's why when you had glam rock, it was all sort of cheap, glittery thing. And a lot of people, there wasn't really, you might have been into Bowie and this stuff, but there wasn't a lot to listen to, and that was the time when everybody basically started listening to reggae. And so on a Saturday, what you do is you go and spend your few, pennies that you had, go to Portobello Road, buy a few reggae 45s, pre-release 45s, and a pound drawer of charge, and you'd go home and listen to it, and that was what everybody did. And so even during the time into punk rock, the first punk rock started in '76. The first punk record was The Damned, didn't come out till late '76. The records were just dribbling out. And meanwhile, if you went to Rough Trade or other these stores, all we were in there doing was buying reggae records. And people would come from Japan to like, oh, let me see punk. And they'd find that we can't buy any, there weren't any punk records because all we were doing was buying reggae records. Yeah. And it was a big, a big surprise to them. But just going back to now to your historical bit about the beginning where they talk about, what happened in '77, but in '76, the first was, and the sound, they talk about 2/7 clash. To me, the big sound of '76 was Yabby You. And
any
it was
particular song?
One Jesus one? Dread. There was just the whole sound of Yabby You, which was a serious kind of pending doom of a sound. And you had the riot in Ladbroke Grove, which was in Bank Holiday, August '76, and that was a serious thing. And then right after that, Patti Smith came over for her second time, and she played Hammersmith Odeon. And I'll never forget this show as one of the funniest things I've ever witnessed, where I really realized that things were completely out of order. And Patti Smith is on stage at Hammersmith Odeon, and she's pulled up Tapazuki. They're just about ready, and she's got Tapazuki, and she pulls Tapazuki onto the stage to play bass with her. They're playing Radio Ethiopia. He starts playing bass in a different key to the rest of the band, and then Kay looks around and goes, okay, and then she pulls up Don Letts onto the mic, and he starts doing this rap about the carnival and Babylon and this and that, and then she starts like
it's a punky reggae party indeed.
Yeah, and then she starts doing one of her guitar solos. I don't know if you ever saw a Patti Smith guitar solo at that time, but it was basically she would masturbate her guitar on her knees, and she was doing this up and down Don Letts' leg as he was kind of like trying to shake her off while he get, you know, and meanwhile the band is like, you know, getting in. I mean, and I looked at this and I said, this is total anarchy. This is, you know, this is something.
Hammersmith-Odeon.
Hammersmith-Odeon, and I said, you know, this is it.
Joly, you used the term before, pre-release, and I think that some people listening to this show, you know, might be interested to know what that means.
Pre-release, I would imagine anybody who listens to Amy knows all about pre-release.
Yeah.
I think
Maybe.
so. I mean, it's our age people.
I get it.
This show is kind of like the anomaly, but it's a good question. It's a good point. All right, just for the record.
Because I don't know if it's...
You know, and at the same time, all right, and my role in this, in all this, was that I came out of the hippie underground, and I just happened to start making badges in '76, and I thought as a sort of means of peer-to-peer, you know, promotion, so we could take the power of promotion out of the people and sort of images virus. And I started putting out, because of this I was so inspired by this Patti Smith show, I made a badge which had red, green and gold with the Patti Smith picture on it, and the punks started wearing it, and the punks started wearing sort of red, gold and green badges. And this in fact led me to meet up with the 12 tribes of Israel, and later with Bob, and I actually to make badges for Bob for a project to export pictures of His Majesty into Ethiopia and a whole business, but also to meet with Bob's brother-in-law, DJ Lepke, and who at that time was in trouble and with the courts, and we designed a special badge as a benefit for him, which was called I Survived, was the badge. And this is the badge that eventually the Bad Brains named.
I was just going to say,
named their song after. And
the
another thing that I did at the time was I happened to have like a radio transmitter, and I used to do a little bit of pirate radio. And eventually I donated my radio transmitter to Lepke, and Lepke started Dread Broadcast Corporation, which was England's first, and in fact Europe's first black pirate radio station, which ironically at the time, its listenership was all like mostly, was mostly punks and people like this rather than the local West Indian community who snubbed it. They said, we don't, why would we want to listen to that? That's what we hear on the street. We want to listen to proper BBC kind of radio. Whereas everybody else said, this is great, this is the stuff we can't hear, we want to hear this. So, Better Badges, we sponsored DBC through its whole period. So, that's...
I don't know why. I always associated with BBC with Mikey Dread. I don't know why that's in my head. No, from your Facebook
page. I will say that he was an influence, and that we distributed his tapes. We distributed, Dread Control tapes into England at that time.
All right, Joly.
So,
all right.
So that's my rap. So now,
that was a good rap.
It was about New York and Patty's who came and kicked the ball along. So
with that show.
That's your cue.
With that show.
With that show.
That show. In this period that we're speaking of, the reception of reggae music in the United States was such a very different thing, and my own exposure to the music came through the rock press, because there were the early singles that were released in this country on Shelter Records on Leon Russell's label. Toots had a single on Leon's label, and Island put out a few things, and Jimmy Cliff on A&M. But so that I read about these records, or read about reggae music, long before I ever heard any of those records, and before Marley and the Wailers had released Catch a Fire. So my introduction was through the rock press, and then eventually through the records and some live shows. When I say some, I say some because in this period that we were in New York, 77 to 82, every major Jamaican artist probably played here at least one time, sometimes many more times. And it's just my regret that I didn't see more of them. I can say I saw memorable shows by Black Uhuru, the Itals, Toots and the Maytals, and Marley's. The last show that Bob played to completion was the one when Marley and the Wailers opened for the Commodores at Madison Square Garden, which I did see.
Well,
that was the last show he completed.
That's a pretty.
So anyway, So we're playing some records.
Okay, we're gonna play
I
music.
wanna say something
now
about-
I wish we had 500
about
hours.
this
'cause there's
record.
good music and then there's a lot of information. Okay, Joly, about the record we're about to play.
You know, when in my original days in '76, when I was first making badges, I was doing it in my friend's place, and he had a rehearsal room downstairs, and we had two bands rehearsing downstairs, and one was Motorhead, who just formed, and the other one was a band called the Rockets, and the drummer was Stuart Copeland, and he formed the Police while I was there. And so I remember being at the kitchen table and him saying to me, "Oh, I'm going to call my band the Police," and I said, "The kids will never go for that. We hate the Police." And I was right, because nobody in England ever really liked the Police until they became big. And the other thing was that I used to try and play Stuart reggae, and he didn't like reggae. And he says that he doesn't like reggae. And the big irony was that the Police kind of brought reggae to the world.
Yes, they
and,
were
you know,
huge ambassadors in bringing.
And one of the things
to
which I really thought made a
masses.
difference was that I've always thought that the dance leads the music, and it was the kind of rockers, swinging rockers dance. You know, when the skanking dance that spread through the punks to out into the world. That when I saw the Police play, I went a little later and saw them play a big show at Paris Olympia. And there was like Sting doing, whatever he does, the Banana Boat song, singing and, and walking on the moon, and the whole crowd was skanking along. And I said, that's the move and that's the song. But it's an irony. But the best song that they did as reggae-wise is definitely the Bed's Too Big Without You. And they didn't, and Sheila Hilton, I think, did it justice. And I think that's a record that you should play.
Well, as a matter of fact, it just happens to be queued up. So Andy Schwartz, Joly, and radio listeners around the world. Here we go.
Okay, is that enough?